The most interesting thing in low resource language technology is a project to develop a license for African language datasets. It's a project run by the Data Science Law Lab at the University of Pretoria. And from what I understand, it is a project to help ensure that people who speak low resource languages, African languages, have ownership and some control over how their data is developed and used. And bear with me for a minute because we're going to get a little bit into copyrights and things that I'm not very good at, but it does get quite interesting. So most openly available data is licensed under Creative Commons, and this is a pretty widespread license. For example, Wikipedia uses Creative Commons. More recently, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York released about 500,000 images from its collection under Creative Commons. Creative Commons is an easy to use and free way for people to be able to share and use a standardized and simple license for creative works. And it gives the creators some options on how and what restrictions and how it can be used. Now, as we know, there isn't a whole lot of data in African languages, and so there is a pressure to make all of that language data openly available for developers, with the assumption that by making it openly available, that will make it much easier for developers to use it for social impact. For example, if you wanted to develop a chatbot in multiple languages to help people in Africa who are living with AIDS and their families to get information and ask questions and get answers quickly, or to express concerns confidentially, you could do that using all of that data, and then they would have that information and not be so reliant on face-to-face conversations alone. The people at the Data Science Law Lab point out that Creative Commons doesn't take into account what they call asymmetries. For example, technologists and developers in Africa might not have access to technology and toolkits and computing power that, for example, big technology companies have. And that means by making the data openly available, those big tech companies are able to improve their language tools and their language models at little cost with fewer resources, taking away the ownership of that data from the people who speak those languages. Their solution is to develop a license that allows African citizens and companies to use the data with few or no restrictions, while restricting people who are outside of Africa who may not understand the priorities, needs, and contexts of the people who speak that language. Now, I think it's really important that people who speak languages have some control over how their data is developed and used and what priorities there are for them. I also am not sure that it's such a bad thing if big tech has better language models in low resource languages. I am a big believer that a language model will only be good if it is developed in cooperation with and using input from people who speak the languages. And I do think that they should have ownership. I'm not sure that this license or any license alone is the way forward. I do think it is a conversation that needs to be had, and that this license is a step forward in that conversation and helps us to have a more structured conversation around it. That is the most interesting thing in low resource language tech.